Ahoy there! Captain Benzie here, coming at you with the first episode of Capital Gains, a new little mini-series that I'm putting together to talk about all things Dreadnoughts, carriers and capitals in general. Now, I know a lot of people are pretty tired about hearing about capitals at this point in time. It's basically been the topic on everyone's lips for a good month or so now. But I'll be completely frank, my biggest issues with capitals have basically been that I'm worried that a lot of people are going to jump into them expecting one thing, finding out that they're not quite what they expected, and therefore being put off the entire game as a result of that experience. So, in today's video, and basically the aim of this series is to give you that kind of information, in today's video we're going to be starting that off by having a look at Dreadnoughts. We're going to be talking about what Dreadnoughts are, how they operate, what you can do with them, how the skills work, and we're going to have a brief look at all of this through the eyes of the Minmatar Republic's Naglfar, because of course if I'm going to be showcasing anything with one of these, it's going to be this one, because I do also believe that this is a pretty versatile ship. It's also fairly interesting looking. Now, of course, as I said, this is a primer to everything that we're going to need to know about getting started with Dreadnoughts. It's not a full guide, that will come later in the series. This is just a getting started situation to sort of forewarn and forearm you about how these operate, to make sure that if you are considering flying one of these, you understand the risks involved. Now, beyond that as well, just as a brief note, I will not be touching on jump drives in this particular video. That will be in a Cat's Academy video on how sinusoidal field generators work, and jump drives and all of that will be covered there, because it's hard for me to demonstrate that on Fulmination, because obviously I need someone else around. Anyway, with all of that said and done then, let's jump right in to talking about Dreadnoughts. First of all then, let's talk about what Dreadnoughts are and what they are not, because I think there's a lot of misconception about this. Dreadnoughts are capital ships. They're one of the smaller types of capital ships. And I know small is not really a word you want to use in regards to capital ships, because these things are genuinely massive, but they are the lower end of the capital ship spectrum, along with carriers. Eventually you will get things like super carriers and indeed titans, which come under the super capital bracket. So yay, we've got that to look forward to. Anyway, one thing first of all that Dreadnoughts are not. These are not solo machines. You are not going to be piloting one of these on your own ever. You need a fleet around you at all times. If I jump into a Tech 3 anomaly at the moment, I will struggle to kill the destroyers that are in that. That is how bad these things are at solo play. They require a fleet around them. First of all, moving them is just ridiculous. If I double tap into space here, you'll see how long it takes me to align or to do anything just to move into that direction. If you want to warp away, you're going to have to make sure you're not in showdown mode, because that will remove your ability to warp. And even then, look at how long this takes to align to get to an actual particular direction. This is, if you're caught with your trousers down in one of these things, you are going to lose the ship. And considering the hulls are about 25 to 30 billion-isk on their own at the point of me making this, that's not something you want to have happen. Now, if we open up the fitting here, and I'm not suggesting this is necessarily a particularly good fitting, it was just a fairly standard fitting. I thought it was a brawler fitting. I'm going to put in a load of defences here, along with some mid-slots for things like being able to hit targets easier, a couple of Nosferatus and neutralisers to help with capacitor, that kind of thing. I am here running capital autocannons, and you'll see optimal range here 26.25, accuracy fall off 38.88. This is at full skills, and we'll talk about skills later on. I'm at full 555 here on capital capital cannon operation and capital cannon upgrade. What I'm getting out of this then is a cold DPS of 1242.69, and you might be thinking, well, hang on a second, that's not much better than a battleship. In fact, it's probably worse than most battleships. On top of which, the tracking speed is terrible. Yeah, the range is nice, but the tracking speed is absolutely god-awful for a brawler. What is the point in this then? Well, simply put, first of all, we have the defense. We've got over 1 million EHP in defense before I activate anything, and if I were just to sit here and activate all of these, the boosters there, not boosters, sorry, the adaptive invulnerability fields there, and go back in, you'll see that that has now gone up even higher to 1,601,838. But this is missing the entire point of Dreadnoughts, and we are just finishing aligning now. We would be warping off at this point in time. That's how long they take. We then have what is called Showdown mode here. And Showdown mode, you can see, has a lot of really nice abilities to it. First of all, your turrets any turrets you have, whether these are capital railguns, capital autocannons, capital strike cannons, capital beam or pulse lasers, capital snub-nosed, get a 740% increase to their damage, which is monstrous. We then have missiles and torpedoes getting an additional 100% damage, with a cooldown time of 80% reduction, which turrets don't get. You'll see there that what you're getting there is straight up additional damage from the turrets, but the missiles, you're reducing their cooldown, which is like 120 seconds normally, but getting a 100% increase on the damage as well, which does cause a massive DPS increase. The capital torpedo flight speed, get an additional bit of range there of 50%. Ship velocity is dropped by 100%, so you will just be completely stationary, or at least you'll return to stationary, and won't be able to increase your velocity. Your armor repairer and shield booster cooldown time is 50% reduced, so those cycle faster, which means you repair quicker, and you'll notice you get an additional 100% repair from those as well. That is monstrous. That turns a standard shield booster into something really quite terrifying. The mass as well is a 900% increase here. What this means is if you were to activate a micro warp drive, for example, while you're moving in normal mode, activate the showdown mode, your mass will be so heavy it will take you a long time to actually slow down. So even though you've got that ship velocity of minus 100%, the mass will mean you actually maintain your current speed for a long time. It's worth noting you absolutely cannot warp when you are in showdown mode. It doesn't matter if no one is disrupting you, you physically cannot warp. There is no way to do it, and your activation cost of this mode is 2000 gigajoules of fuel, which is pretty expensive. Anyway, what we're going to do then is activate showdown mode now. There we go, and you'll see all of that goes through there. If we then have a look, for example, at our shield boosters, you'll see that these now have an activation time of 3.85 seconds, and they are boosting 38,192 hit points per activation. That's just the Mark 9. That is insane. Like, genuinely, that is how these things stay alive. You'll also notice that the DPS on the weapons has shot through the roof, giving us now a total DPS here, if I go back into the fitting menu, of 10,438.62. And again, that is using just Mark 9 gear. Everything on this ship is stuff that is nice and easy to source. It's Mark 9 capital shields, Mark 9 adaptive invulnerability fields, Mark 9 capital cap batteries. All of this stuff is stuff that you will find readily in current anomalies as we've gone live. Now, you can hopefully see already that this is an insane amount of DPS, but again, with those tracking penalties, you are going to struggle to hit anything that is moving if it is not another capital ship or a citadel. Dreadnoughts are designed for two very specific tasks: blasting the shields and armor off of citadels, whilst also taking out enemy capital ships. These are anti-capital platforms. You are going to be using those to take down other dreadnoughts and other carriers. That is it. Using these in PvE is an absolute waste, and you are going to really struggle, because as soon as anything smaller than a capital starts moving, you are going to struggle to hit it. The second it gets to any form of angular velocity, you just will not hit it, even with snub-nosed railguns, which have the highest tracking in the game, even using a whole load of tracking computers and stuff like that. It's just not going to happen. Anyway, with all of that said and done, we've had a look at the fitting now. Let's jump in and have a talk about the skills that make all of this happen. So, before we actually look at the skills directly, if we have a look at the Naglfar's stat page here, you'll see that it's got a roll bonus. All of the Dreadnoughts have this same roll bonus of a 400% increase to Intosis Link activation time, which is a bad thing. It means these are bad at using Intosis Links, so you do need to bring a fleet with you that are using Intosis Links, and jump drive available. As I said, we'll talk about jump drives otherwise later on. The Naglfar and all of the Dreadnoughts then get bonuses from Capital Weapon Operation Bonus and Dreadnought Command. So here with the Naglfar, of course, that is Capital Cannon Operation Bonus. The Monstrous would be Capital Railgun. The Revelation would be Capital Laser, so on and so forth. It's always the same: Capital Weapon Operation and Dreadnought Command. So those are skills, of course, that are going to be useful. Starting with cruising technology then, if we go right the way to the bottom past Industrial and Freighter, we come to Dreadnought Command. Command. If we look at the skill points required here, you'll see that there are nearly 2 million skill points required in order to get this to Basic 5. Now it can be tempting, because obviously with basic skills, once you hit 4, you can start training Advanced. I do not recommend that here with the Dreadnoughts, because you want that additional bonus. If we're looking at the Naglfar, for example, that Dreadnought Command bonus is a 7.5% increase to shield boost amount, and if you were to stop at Dreadnought Command 4, you're only getting 4 of those 7.5% rather than the full possible 5 for 37.5%. Train that all the way to level 5 as quickly as you can. The actual bonuses, the skills, aren't particularly exciting. 20% additional flight velocity, 35% Dreadnought inertia modifier, which helps you turn that little bit faster. But as you saw, I'm fully maxed out on these skills, and it still took that long to align, and just flight velocity is terrible. The Dreadnought Command skill itself almost does nothing. It is just the actual the bonus that the hulls get from it that make it worthwhile, which means I don't necessarily recommend going into Advanced Dreadnought Command or Expert Dreadnought Command, definitely, for a long time. You don't need these. These are not key skills for you. You want to get Dreadnought Command all the way up to Basic 5 as quickly as possible. I would genuinely stop there. When we look at cruising technology as well under navigation, Afterburner and Micro Warp Drive, those skills do affect capital tier Afterburners and Micro Warp Drives. You'll see I do have a Micro Warp Drive fitted just in case I need to do a little bit of movement. I don't know why you would ever put an Afterburner on a capital. It just doesn't seem worth it to me. Like the downsides of a Micro Warp Drive, the additional size just doesn't seem to be a problem. The additional capacitor again the capacitor loss doesn't seem to be a problem. I just don't think an Afterburner does nearly enough. But further down, we then have the Jump Drive Operation skill. And again, we'll talk about this later on when we do the Catskull Academy on how jump drives work and how sinusoidal fields work in general. But for now, just know that this skill is here, and it's one you're going to want to train into eventually, because it's going to save you a lot of fuel, get you additional range, and allow you to actually move around the field that little bit faster, especially if you're going to need a fleet with you in order to operate those. Now, the key point here, as well as we come into maintenance technology, is that shield operation has been reworded. This now only affects small, medium, and large shield boosters. It does not affect capitals. There is a new set of skills at the bottom, and this is the same for armor operation. If we come all the way to the bottom here, capital armor operation and capital shield operation. These are very similar to the standard shield operation and armor operation, but they affect capital modules, which the basic versions don't. This means if you are reskilling into capitals, bear that in mind. If you're coming out of the smaller ships, out of sub-capitals, and you are dedicating yourself completely to capital ships, you're going to want to get rid of your old shield booster or armor repairer skills and move into capital variants. It is worth noting that shield hardening, however, still works. Capital ships will still be using adaptive invulnerability fields, reactive armor hardeners, that kind of thing, all there, no worries. We then have the defense upgrades, of course. Capital defense upgrades are at the bottom, Dreadnought and Carrier are separate. These do give you quite a lot of additional EHP and may be worth skilling into later on. The most important skills, as far as I'm concerned, up to this point though, are going to be getting your Dreadnought Command to 5, along with the Capital Weapon Operation to 5 as well. Then come back and do the defences, like the shields and so on and so forth, because you want to get the bonuses out of the capitals first, then go back and start adding some of the support skills. That's not to say I would undock it with just basically no other capital skills other than Dreadnought Command 5 and, Capital Cannon Operation 5. I would probably wait until I've got some more skills before flying them, but just to let you know, those are the ones to focus on first. Then we have Engineering. Engineering is, of course, what you'd expect it to do. As with any other ship, it's Dreadnought Capacitor Increase, Dreadnought Power Grid Increase, and Dreadnought Warp Capacitor Reduction. Now, interestingly enough, I'm not sure really that the power grid increase is really necessary. I have not come close to even maxing out the power grid on any of the capitals, but hey, the capacitor is definitely very nice. The warp capacitor need as well is sort of hit and miss. You don't overly need it, but ultimately that additional capacitor helps you keep things going. Again, once you hit expert dreadnought engineering, you do get capital turret power grid requirement 15% down. This doesn't really do much, because if you're flying carriers, they don't have high slots, and even with that 15% reduction, you're not going to be able to put capital turrets onto battleships anyway, because of the module restrictions and just the sheer amount of power grid they use. But again, it's theoretically nice if you're maxing out the power grid on dreadnoughts, which just right now I really don't think anyone is, but hey, I could be completely wrong on that. Electronic systems, no new stuff. Target management is going to be a nice thing to have here. Dreadnoughts have very low lock speeds, so training into target management is going to be useful just to help you lock on a bit faster. Ignore your armored commands and shield commands. If we move into the weapon technology, then this is where things get interesting. Of course, we're looking at the Naglfar here, but this does apply to the others as well, based on their individual weapon systems. So of course we have our small cannon operation, small cannon upgrade, medium cannon operation, medium cannon upgrade, large cannon operation, large cannon upgrade, and then we come to capital cannon operation and upgrade. Now, these are incredibly skill point intensive. Again, you're going to want to get capital weapon operation 5 as quickly as possible, because your ship will benefit directly from it. So capital cannon operation here, 5 for the Naglfar. That is going to cost you over nearly 5 million skill points. It's not a cheap skill at all. What that is going to give you basically, though, is a 20% increase to cannon damage and a 10% increase to capital cannon tracking speed. And as you take this up a little bit higher, you'll see you get more damage and more tracking speed right the way up there. Upgrade, on the other hand, gives you damage, accuracy, and optimal range, but slightly less damage than the operations would give you, and none of them have bonuses to the weapon upgrade yet. So it's not as important. I would argue that the capital weapon operation is the more important of those two skills. Basically, the point I'm getting at here is that if you are going to be flying a dreadnought, the first thing you want to do is to max those two skills: capital cannon operation, dreadnought command, or capital railgun operation, dreadnought command, depending on, or laser or whatever, depending on which ship you're flying. Get those to get the bonuses, then go back and get your capital shield or capital armor, depending on what type of capital you're flying. Here on the Naglfar, obviously shield booster mount. We're going to be wanting to use capital shield skills in order to keep this alive, then things like your capital weapon upgrade, so on and so forth. This will, of course, be similar to carriers, but obviously replacing that, and we'll cover that further in a future video. Ultimately, the point I really want to make here is just the amount of skill points that is going to take for you. If we have a look at just the Dreadnought Command, again, Dreadnought Command alone is nearly 2 million skill points. If we then come across to the Shield Operation, and if we just go Capital Shield Operation 5, the basic one there, that's another million. It's not too bad actually on this one. But it starts getting very expensive once you start looking at advanced. But 2 million there to start with, plus all the other bits. If we go into the defense upgrade and go down to that, capital just Dreadnought defense upgrade, very expensive, nearly 4 million for that. Across into engineering, Dreadnought engineering toward the bottom here. You're looking at another 4 million there. Finally, then heading into the weapon systems themselves, and this is where the real cost does start to come in. These are insane skills. Capital Cannon Operation is nearly 5 million alone. Capital Cannon Upgrade, however, that's over 5 million. That's insane. And once they start hitting like the advanced Capital Cannon Upgrade, that level 5 there alone is 8.5 million skill points. These are not ships that you just delve into, and so, you don't just dabble in capital ships. You are going to have to dedicate your character to this entirely. It's also worth noting that if we look at, for example, here, Mark 9 Capital Autocannon, you'll see it has a skill bit here at the bottom, a stat here at the bottom, Capital Module License. That means it can only be fitted to capital ships. You cannot fit these to other things, even if you wanted to, even if you had the power grid. It's the same when we look at things like the Capital Shield Booster. Capital Cap batteries have it, Capital Module License. Basically, if it has capital in the name of the module, then you can only fit it to capital ships. You'll notice that the mid slots here, I've just gone for some basic ones. These are all just standard larges because I couldn't find capital variants. And it's the same with the rigs though. Capital cannon burst aerator, capital cannon collisions, capital semiconductor, capital capacitor control, capital targeting systems. If we look at these, they all have that capital module license 1. You cannot put standard rigs on a capital ship. You cannot put capital rigs on standard ships. It just does not work. Now, as a final point, just before we finish this off then, if I were to dock up, we do also have, I've got things like the strike cannons. I'm just going to showcase a secondary fit here to talk about what other kind of things you could do with a capital ship. Obviously, I'm going to cut the video here because, yeah, the whole align time to dock at this station. Okay, actually, I'm right next to the station, so I can dock without aligning. Of course I can. Silly Benzie. Anyway, here we are now inside. Once it loads up, because fulmination takes a bit of time to load for me, I'm going to actually take off the high slots here, and we're going to put on Mark 9 capital strike cannons. Because obviously you might decide that if you're using something like a Nagelfar, which is, as I said, quite versatile, you may not necessarily want to have this as a brawler. You might want to go for a more sniper style fit, and certainly strike cannons definitely are capable of doing that. Now at this point I would probably be quite happy to lose some of the sort of capabilities, some of the defences and stuff like that. So let's take off some of these. We'll add a couple of tracking computers. I'm not suggesting this as a good fit, like seriously don't follow this fit. I'm going to be playing with these a bit more. I just want to showcase some of the stuff we could do. Now again, you'll see that the DPS there is 621.61. That's utterly terrible. That's atrocious. You know, what are you going to kill with 621 DPS? Why are you flying a capital ship? You know, I've got blasted frigates that do more than 621 DPS, and they've got better tracking. Not quite the range, admittedly, that this has, but hey, there we go. Now, if we were to look at the actual weapons here now, you'll see these are monstrous. 148 kilometers optimal range, 134 kilometer accuracy fall off. We're at 270 kilometers, we're not even at 50% damage. It's insane. And now if I were to put the showdown mode back on, you'll see that that all activates there, and if we go into the fittings, the DPS is going to look very disappointing compared to what we saw earlier, the 10,000, when it loads. 5,221, it's really not all that much, but again, consider that that is at 148 kilometers of optimal range, and most importantly, look at the alpha damage. 12,503 thermal, 12,503 explosive, 8,252 on kinetic. That is an insane amount of damage per strike. The problem with this is that activation time of 19.11 seconds, slowing things down. If you want to go for something that's going to stand at the back of a fleet and just blap ships from 200, 300 kilometers away, then this is definitely going to be how you'd want to fit it. And that's before we even activate the tracking computers. In fact, let's do that. Let's just quickly activate both those tracking computers and the gyro stabilizer and see what that does for us. We go back into fitting now. That takes us to 6,607.29. And look at that optimal range, 270 kilometers. We're hitting at 500 kilometers. 500 kilometers and we're at half range. Can you even lock on at that range? That's the question I would like to ask. So, what I'm trying to get at in this video here is that capitals do a lot of damage. Like on paper, the damage and their capabilities is monstrous, but you are not going to be able to combat anything that is basically smaller than another capital. If you have angular velocity on a battleship, then even the autocannons are going to struggle to hit that. And if something orbits you at 30 kilometers in a battleship, they're going to be able to hit you and you can't hit them back. This means in a fleet, a capital Dreadnought is going to be basically a sitting duck. It is going to exist purely to destroy other capital ships, other Dreadnoughts, carriers, and that kind of thing. This gives a kind of rock, paper, scissors approach to fleet combat when Dreadnoughts are involved. Essentially, the Dreadnoughts are the rocks. The scissors are other Dreadnoughts and or carriers, preferably carriers for this example. So rock is the Dreadnought, scissors is the carrier, and paper is the entire rest of the fleet, anything sub-capital. A fleet of sub-capitals are going to easily pull down a Dreadnought, and that Dreadnought is going to have nothing do in that situation. But the Dreadnought is going to absolutely smash apart carriers, and carriers are going to rip apart entire fleets of sub-capitals. That's how this works. And I'm personally veering more towards being a carrier pilot on my ult than Dreadnoughts, but if you like big damage numbers, if you like very high defensive numbers, then Dreadnoughts definitely could be the ship for you. Anyway, please do let me know your thoughts and opinions regarding these ships in the comments section down below. I know a lot of you are very excited to be flying Dreadnoughts and other capitals, and I want to know if any of you are skilling into them. Has anyone got one built yet? Because these, I know the first one started building, I think some completed yesterday. Void completed a couple of its capitals yesterday morning. So it's certainly possible that a lot of people now actually have access to these and may have been flying them in a live test environment, and I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions on them. And especially if you're not interested at all in capitals, if this has sort of swayed you away from them, let me know why. If this has actually sort of said to you, okay, actually, yeah, I was interested in capitals before, now I really want to give Dreadnoughts a try, let me know. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Otherwise, folks, stay tuned for more of this Capital Gains series. I will have these coming out soon. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of them. Ding that notification bell and make sure to select all notifications. Otherwise, folks, happy sailing and see you in New Eden.